Welcome to your walkthrough for your pre-sketched pet portrait mini canvas. Today I'm going to be painting my kitty cat Andrew. He is such a sweetheart and I'm excited to get him down on a mini canvas and to walk you guys through from start to finish on your mini canvas. Now I know he's a kitty cat, but as we go along, a lot of the same steps that I'm going to go over apply to all mammals. So if you have a doggy at home, don't worry. There's going to be a lot of stuff to help you finish yours and guide you along. So we're going to get started with our backgrounds. Make sure you've got all your supplies ready, your paint, your water, your brushes, your napkin, your reference photo, all good to go. So for the background, we're going to start with our small to medium flat brush that I spoke of in the previous intro. So grab that and let's talk about backgrounds. So we always want to do the background first, and today I'm going to show you a couple different possibilities. We're going to start out with a one color flat colored background, and then I'm going to go into creating a little bit of texture, adding some layers, blending wet on wet, and possibilities even further. I'm thinking I want to do a blue background, and I think I'm going to actually add in some green texture in the background like a tree without actually adding in any of the branches. So I'm going to play with that, but if you know what color you want for your background or what kind of look you're going for, feel free to start mixing your colors, get them poured out, ready to go, and start painting when you're ready. The first thing I want to say about mixing is because our canvas is so small, you're going to be mixing very small amounts of paint. That being said, you still want to make sure that you mix enough paint so that you don't have to keep recreating the same colors. So I'm going to stress that here and there throughout the video to make sure that you're mixing larger amounts of paint than you're going to actually use. So since I said I'm doing light blue, I've got a scoop of regular blue here, just kind of a nice medium blue, and some white. So go ahead and start mixing your color or colors. So I'm going to start with a nice light blue here, and I'm going to have some green texture. So if you know you want texture or you're going to do a gradient or multiple colors, go ahead and mix the other color. I'm going to rinse my brush in between, make sure it's nice and clean and dry before I go ahead and mix my second color. And I'm going to make a light green, so I'm just going to mix some white and some nice medium green. Very nice. I'm going to wipe as much of that paint off as I can in the same little spot and then give it a nice rinse. Another thing to keep in mind when you're mixing is to try and mix in the smallest space possible. That way, instead of just painting the plate, you're actually creating a pile of paint. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And let's paint. So we don't want to glob the paint too much on. We want to spread it out nice and thin, but not too thin. You want to make sure the paint is running smoothly. It should go on very easily. And then right away, I'm going to start cutting in right to the edge of the sketch. Okay, making sure to get all the way to the edge of the canvas here. Later on, probably after we complete, I'm going to paint the very edges of my canvas. If you have time, you can paint the edges of your canvas before you move on. Although sometimes with the mini canvas, you might be painting flat on a table and you might want to be touching the edges here and there. So if you're going to be moving it around, probably wait until after you're done, and then you can paint the sides. So when you're going in towards the line, it's better to be right on the line or just a teeny bit inside the line versus leaving white space outside. So I went in just a little bit here, no worries. We're going to cover it up with paint later on, so as long as you don't completely lose your line, then you're good to go. But if you did, let's say accidentally, get some paint far into your pet and you wanted to get rid of it, you can get your brush slightly damp, so dip it in your water and then wipe most of the water off, and then come back and pick the paint up. So I'm just going to paint right where I don't want it, just like an eraser, and then I'm going to wipe the paint off on my napkin, maybe rinse in between each swipe. And just like that, you have a paint eraser. All right, and so our brush strokes might be leaving a little bit of texture on the canvas. Let's say you can kind of see the wiggle or the stroke of it. If that is bothering you, you're doing just one color coat and you'd like to get it nice and smooth, the best way to do that is to go from one edge of the canvas to the next, either horizontally or vertically, pick one. I normally go for vertical. I think it's a little easier. And just kind of work on smoothing everything out in that one direction. Another option is to get a little more intentional with your texture, and you can literally just kind of dab the brush everywhere and you'll get a little bit more intentional texture here. You can play with it. You don't want to add too much paint here and get crazy big globs, but you can get enough to create some texture here. Now if you want to do crazy big blobs, you'll basically just need to wait a lot longer for it to dry. Acrylic paint dries very quickly though, so definitely not long compared to oils. All right, but since I am going to do some intentional tree texture, I think what I'm going to do is smooth out this area over here in the bottom. I'm going to go horizontal. So I just did my best to smooth it out. If you find that still is not to your liking, another option is later on after you've painted kitty kitty or doggy, you can come back and paint a second coat on top, and that will definitely eliminate some of the texture. So since I'm using wet paint on wet, if you're bringing a second color in and you want it to blend on the canvas like so, you want that paint to be pretty wet. So make sure it's wet if you want it to blend. The more you touch it, the more it starts to blend. So you can come back with your blue and soften areas, blend it even more. I'm going to start off with just kind of a base blend underneath. Trying to get up right into the edges of Kitty. Then I'm going to come in with some more solid texture, and instead of blending, I'm just going to leave the dots where they fall. Just randomly letting my hand decide where it's going to go. Could get a little more intentional here and there. Let's see. Definitely want to add some off the edge. So I tend to go a little more impressionist. I find it's just more fun for me to be very loose with it, but also just for the sake of the tutorial, I could spend hours in details if I let myself. So for the sake of the tutorial, I'm keeping it simple and fun and light. So that is my background. Very simple wet on wet effect. You could also, if you wanted a more realistic look, I would wait for that background to dry and you can come on top of it and paint whatever your heart desires. All right, moving on to the next step.